Behind America's most wholesome TV family lurked secrets that would make even Eddie Haskell blush. From wartime death rumors that fooled the nation to toilet controversies that nearly got the show banned, Leave It to Beaver's squeaky-clean image hid a world of bizarre casting accidents, dangerous police shootouts, and Louvre-worthy art that connected the Cleaver family to mysteries far stranger than anything Beaver ever imagined. Fact 1. The toilet that almost killed the show. Picture this. In 1957, showing a toilet on television was considered so scandalous that it nearly prevented one of America's most beloved family shows from ever making it to air. The very first episode of Leave It to Beaver, titled Captain Jack, was supposed to be the show's debut, but CBS censors had other plans when they saw what the Cleaver boys were up to in their bathroom. The episode's plot was innocent enough by today's standards. Wally and Beaver had ordered what they thought would be a full-grown alligator from a comic book advertisement, expecting to receive an 8-foot reptile for just $2.50. Instead, they got a tiny baby alligator that arrived in a shoebox, leaving the boys disappointed but determined to keep their new pet anyway. The problem came when they needed somewhere to hide the little creature from their parents. Since alligators need water to survive, the boys decided the most logical place to keep their pet was in the toilet tank, which Wally cleverly referred to as the alligator's aquarium. Jerry Mathers, who played Beaver, later explained to Fox News that they knew alligators needed water, so the toilet seemed like the perfect solution. However, what seemed perfectly reasonable to the show's writers was absolutely shocking to network executives in the 1950s. At that time, television had strict standards about what could be shown on screen, and bathrooms were completely off-limits. You couldn't show a toilet, you couldn't show a bathroom, and the very idea of either appearing on family television was considered inappropriate and offensive to viewers. The censors at CBS took one look at the episode and immediately refused to approve it for broadcast. After several rounds of negotiations between the network and the production company, they finally reached a compromise that satisfied everyone. The episode could air, but only if the camera showed just the back of the toilet tank where the alligator was hidden, carefully avoiding any view of the actual toilet bowl where all the dirty business happened. This tiny concession allowed the episode to eventually make it to air, though it was pushed back and became the second episode instead of the intended pilot. Fact 2. Jerry Mathers' fake Vietnam death. In 1968, at the height of the Vietnam War, a shocking rumor spread across America that left fans devastated and confused. Jerry Mathers, the beloved child actor who played Beaver Cleaver, had supposedly been killed in action overseas. The rumor became so widespread and believable that it fooled not only millions of fans but even Jerry's own television family members, creating one of the most persistent celebrity death hoaxes in entertainment history. The false story apparently began when a 21-year-old sergeant named Stephen Allen Mathers from Rockwell, Iowa, was actually killed in combat in Tay Ninh on October 26, 1968. Somehow, this tragic real death became confused with the former child star, and news reports began circulating that claimed the actor from Leave It to Beaver had died in Vietnam. The mix-up was made more believable by the fact that Jerry Mathers had indeed joined the military, serving in the California Air National Guard from 1966 to 1969, though he never left the United States. The rumor spread so convincingly that Tony Dow, who played Jerry's television brother Wally, actually believed the news and sent sympathy flowers to Jerry's parents' house. Even actress Shelley Winters announced Jerry's supposed death to Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show, further cementing the false story in the public mind. Jerry himself discovered the rumor when his college roommate woke him up one morning, thrust a newspaper in his face and asked, "Do you know you're dead?" The death hoax became so persistent that Jerry Mathers had to make public appearances just to prove he was still alive. In 1980, he and Tony Dow even appeared together on Saturday Night Live's Weekend Update segment with Bill Murray, specifically to make fun of the Vietnam War death rumor that had followed Jerry for over a decade. Despite these efforts, the false story continued to resurface periodically, becoming an enduring piece of television folklore that Jerry would have to address for the rest of his life. Fact 3. Eddie Haskell became a real cop. Ken Osmond's portrayal of the scheming, two-faced Eddie Haskell was so convincing that it completely destroyed his acting career, forcing him to trade Hollywood for a badge and gun as a Los Angeles police officer. After Leave It to Beaver ended in 1963, Osmond found himself facing what he called a death sentence in the entertainment industry because casting directors couldn't see him as anyone other than the troublemaking teenager who sweet-talked adults while plotting mischief behind their backs. Despite his talent and years of experience, Osmond struggled to find steady work throughout the late 1960s, as he was repeatedly turned down for roles because producers felt audiences would only see Eddie Haskell on screen. In a 2008 radio interview, Osmond explained his frustration, saying he wasn't complaining because Eddie had been good to him. But work became increasingly hard to come by. By 1968, he had bought his first house, gotten married in 1969, and was planning to start a family, which meant he desperately needed a reliable income. Facing financial pressure and limited career options, Osmond made the dramatic decision to join the Los Angeles Police Department in 1970, trading his acting career for 18 years of law enforcement service. He became a motorcycle officer and worked primarily in the Central Traffic Division, where he was rarely recognized as the former child star. However, police work proved far more dangerous than anything Eddie Haskell ever encountered on television. In 1980, Osmond and his partner were patrolling for drunk drivers when they encountered Albert Cunningham, who was driving a stolen taxi. During the confrontation, Cunningham shot Osmond 3 times before his partner wounded the suspect. Although Osmond's bulletproof vest absorbed most of the impact, he still required hospitalization and later had to retire on disability due to his injuries. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that television's most famous troublemaker had become a real-life hero who risked his life protecting the community. Fact 4. June's pearls hid a surgical secret. The iconic string of white pearls that June Cleaver wore in practically every episode of Leave It to Beaver wasn't a carefully planned costume choice by the show's wardrobe department, but rather Barbara Billingsley's own clever solution to hide what she described as a physical flaw that bothered her greatly. Behind the perfect image of television's most pristine housewife was a very real and personal insecurity that the actress managed to turn into one of the most recognizable fashion statements in television history. Barbara Billingsley had what she called a hollow in her neck, which was actually a noticeable surgical scar that created an indentation in the skin near her throat. This hollow would catch shadows under the bright studio lights during filming, creating unflattering dark areas that would be clearly visible to television audiences. Rather than rely on makeup or special lighting techniques to minimize the problem, Billingsley came up with her own practical solution that would become her trademark look. The pearl necklace idea was entirely Billingsley's suggestion to the producers, as she believed that a strand of white pearls would help lighten up the shadowy area around her neck and draw attention away from the surgical scar. The strategy worked so perfectly that the pearls became an essential part of June Cleaver's character, reinforcing her image as an elegant and put-together mother who maintained her appearance even while doing household chores. When alternative coverage was needed, the show's stylists would occasionally use scarves or high-cut blouses to achieve the same effect, but the pearl necklace remained the preferred choice throughout the series. The accessory became so closely associated with the character that when the cast reunited for the sequel series The New Leave It to Beaver, an entire episode was dedicated to the story of June's necklace being lost, showing just how important this simple piece of jewelry had become to both the character and the show's legacy. Fact 5. The high heels were height strategy. June Cleaver's famous high heels, which became just as iconic as her pearls and perfectly pressed dresses, weren't actually a fashion statement or character choice at all, but rather a clever production trick designed to solve a very practical problem that develops on any long-running television show featuring child actors. As Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow grew from young boys into teenagers over the course of 6 seasons, the show's producers faced an unexpected challenge that threatened to undermine the family dynamics that were central to the series. When Leave It to Beaver first began filming in 1957, Barbara Billingsley stood comfortably taller than both of her television sons, which helped reinforce her role as the authoritative mother figure who could look down at her boys when delivering important life lessons or gentle scolding. However, as the seasons progressed, both Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow experienced normal teenage growth spurts that gradually closed the height gap between them and their television mother, creating a visual problem for the show's directors and camera operators. The solution came in the form of progressively higher heels for Barbara Billingsley, who actually started the series wearing simple flat shoes during the earliest episodes. By the second season, she had been fitted with modest heels, and as the boys continued growing, her footwear became increasingly elevated to maintain the proper visual hierarchy that audiences expected from a traditional family structure. The 5'5" actress needed every advantage she could get to continue towering over her rapidly growing television children. This height strategy worked so well that it became completely invisible to viewers, who simply accepted June's elegant heeled shoes as part of her character's naturally sophisticated style. The practical necessity of keeping the mother figure physically above her sons contributed to the unrealistic but beloved image of June Cleaver as a woman who maintained perfect posture and graceful appearance even while performing in everyday household tasks like cooking dinner or cleaning the living room. Fact 6. Wally's art ended up in the Louvre. Long after his days as the all-American Big Brother on Leave It to Beaver, Tony Dow achieved something that would have been completely unimaginable during his television career. He became a serious fine artist whose work was displayed in one of the world's most prestigious museums. In 2008, Dow's bronze sculpture titled Unarmed Warrior was selected for exhibition at the Salon de la Nationale des Beaux-Arts at the Carrousel du Louvre in Paris, making him one of only 2 United States sculptors chosen for this highly competitive annual juried show. The piece depicted a bronze figure of a woman holding a shield, and its selection represented the culmination of decades of artistic development that began long after Dow had stepped away from his acting career. Growing up in a creative household where his father worked as a designer and contractor who built homes for people in the film industry, Dow had always been surrounded by artistic influences, but it wasn't until the early 2000s that he committed himself full-time to sculpture as his primary passion and profession. Dow's artistic journey began with creating abstract pieces from burl wood that he found in the hills around his home in the Santa Monica Mountains, and he gradually expanded into bronze work and mixed-media sculptures that incorporated both natural and man-made materials. His talent and dedication to the craft eventually caught the attention of gallery owners and art critics who recognized his work on its own merits, completely separate from his television fame. When asked about having his art displayed at the Louvre, Dow expressed both pride and amazement at the achievement, noting that it represented about as high an honor as any artist could receive, especially since the exhibition was juried by a panel of judges who selected pieces based purely on artistic merit. He particularly appreciated that the judges at the Louvre had no knowledge of his television background, meaning his sculpture was chosen entirely for its artistic value rather than his celebrity status. Fact 7. The Alice Cooper urban legend. During the 1970s, one of the most bizarre and persistent celebrity rumors in entertainment history claimed that Ken Osmond, the actor who played the scheming Eddie Haskell on Leave It to Beaver, had transformed himself into Alice Cooper, the shock rock star famous for his theatrical performances and dark makeup. This urban legend became so widespread and convincing that it forced the real Alice Cooper to take drastic measures to prove his actual identity to confused fans and journalists who kept asking about his supposed television past. The rumor apparently started after Alice Cooper gave an interview to Rolling Stone magazine, where he mentioned that he had been Eddie Haskell as a child, but he was speaking metaphorically about his mischievous personality, rather than making any literal claim about his identity. Unfortunately, some readers interpreted his comment as a factual statement about his past career, and the misunderstanding quickly spread like wildfire through word of mouth and fan magazines throughout the music and entertainment world. What made the rumor seem plausible to many people was the striking physical resemblance between Ken Osmond and Alice Cooper, whose real name is Vincent Furnier. Both men had similar facial features and build, and when Alice Cooper appeared in his stage makeup and costumes, it became easy for fans to imagine that the clean-cut teenager from Mayfield had undergone a dramatic transformation into a gothic rock performer as a form of rebellion against his wholesome television image. The situation became so problematic for Alice Cooper that he was forced to wear custom-made t-shirts that emphatically declared, "No, I'm not Eddie Haskell," in large letters across the front, serving as a walking contradiction to the persistent rumors. Despite these efforts and numerous public statements clarifying his real identity, the urban legend continued to circulate for years, demonstrating just how powerful and enduring celebrity myths can become once they take hold in popular culture, especially when they involve such a dramatic contrast between wholesome family television and rebellious rock music. Fact 8. Jerry was discovered shopping. Jerry Mather's path to becoming one of television's most recognizable child stars began with a completely random encounter at a Los Angeles department store that had nothing to do with acting, auditions, or Hollywood connections. His mother was simply going about her regular shopping routine when a store employee approached her with an unexpected proposition that would change her young son's life forever and launch him toward his destiny as Theodore Beaver Cleaver. According to Mathers himself, his mother was browsing through the department store when a woman working there noticed her little boy. and was struck by his appearance and natural charm. The employee asked if Jerry's mother would be interested in having her son participate in a children's fashion show that the store was organizing, explaining that they were looking for young models to showcase their clothing line to customers and potential buyers. This innocent fashion show appearance became Jerry's very first experience performing in front of an audience, and it gave him the confidence and stage presence that would prove invaluable when he later began auditioning for television and film roles. The department store modeling gig taught him how to walk out in front of a crowd without being nervous or self-conscious, skills that translated perfectly to the world of live television that was just beginning to flourish in the 1950s. From that initial fashion show, Jerry began doing more modeling work and eventually moved into appearing in live television commercials and programs, since many shows were broadcast directly to audiences without being pre-recorded. His early experience walking confidently in front of live audiences at department store events made him a natural fit for the demands of live television broadcasting, where young actors needed to perform their scenes perfectly the first time without the luxury of multiple takes or editing to fix mistakes. This accidental discovery at a department store ultimately led to his starring role opposite vaudeville comedian Ed Wynn in a commercial for Pet Milk, which opened more doors and eventually brought him to the attention of the casting directors who were looking for the perfect child to play Beaver Cleaver. Fact 9. The house had multiple lives. The iconic Cleaver family home that viewers came to know and love during the later seasons of Leave It to Beaver had a fascinating Hollywood history that began years before the first episode ever aired, and its story continued long after the series ended in 1963. What appeared to be a simple suburban family residence was actually a movie set facade that was originally constructed in 1955 for The Desperate Hours, a crime thriller starring Humphrey Bogart, where it served as the backdrop for a much darker and more violent story than anything the wholesome Cleaver family would ever experience. When production of Leave It to Beaver moved from Republic Studios to Universal Studios starting in Season 3, the show's creators needed a new house to represent the Cleaver home, so they chose this existing facade and transformed it into the residence at 211 Pine Street in the fictional town of Mayfield. The house became so closely associated with the show that many fans considered it the real Cleaver home, even though it was just the front wall of a building with no interior rooms behind it. After Leave It to Beaver concluded its run, the versatile facade continued its television career by becoming the home office of the title character in Marcus Welby, MD, which ran from 1969 to 1976. The production team made significant alterations to the front appearance of the house to suit the medical drama, but it was restored to its Leave It to Beaver appearance in 1983 for the filming of Still the Beaver, the television movie that reunited most of the original cast. Over the decades, the facade was moved several times around the Universal Studios backlot as the studio reorganized its sets and streets, eventually ending up in a neglected corner of the lot that was rarely visited by tour groups. In a sad end to this piece of television history, the original Cleaver House facade was demolished in May of 2022, just 1 week before a scheduled studio tour that would have allowed fans to see it one final time. Fact 10. Beaver's honest audition trick. Jerry Mathers landed the most famous role of his career, not through polished acting skills or impressive performances, but by displaying the kind of genuine, unfiltered honesty that would become the hallmark of his character on Leave It to Beaver. During his audition for the show, the casting directors noticed that the young boy seemed uncomfortable and distracted, so they decided to ask him a simple question about where he would rather be at that moment, instead of sitting in their office trying out for a television role. Without hesitation or any attempt to give the answer he thought the adults wanted to hear, Jerry told the producers that he would much rather be at his Cub Scout den meeting, which he was planning to attend immediately after the audition was finished. This completely honest and refreshingly straightforward response caught the attention of everyone in the room because it demonstrated exactly the kind of authentic childhood innocence and directness that they had been looking for in their search for the perfect actor to play Theodore Beaver Cleaver. The casting directors had been seeing dozens of child actors who were trying their best to impress them with rehearsed performances and overly polished behavior, but Jerry's candid admission that he had better things to do than audition for their show showed them a natural, unguarded personality that couldn't be taught or faked. His boyish honesty and genuine enthusiasm for activities like Cub Scouts made him the ideal candidate to portray a character who was supposed to represent the authentic experiences and perspectives of real American children growing up in suburban neighborhoods. This moment of unscripted truthfulness became the foundation for Jerry's entire approach to playing Beaver throughout the series, as the producers encouraged him to bring that same natural, honest quality to his performance in every episode. The casting directors realized they had found someone who didn't need to act like a typical kid because he genuinely was one, complete with all the innocent priorities and straightforward thinking that made Beaver Cleaver such a beloved and relatable character for audiences of all ages. Fact 11. The show created TV's first finale. Leave It to Beaver made television history by becoming the first series ever to end with a planned finale episode while the show was still popular and earning good ratings, setting a precedent that would eventually become standard practice in the television industry. Unlike most shows of that era, which were typically canceled by networks due to declining viewership or rising production costs, Leave It to Beaver came to an end in 1963 because its young star had simply outgrown the role and wanted to pursue a normal teenage life away from the demands of Hollywood. Jerry Mathers, who had been playing Beaver since he was 8 years old, was now entering high school and felt it was time to focus on his education rather than continuing his acting career. The decision to end the series was entirely driven by Mathers' desire to experience regular high school activities like playing sports, attending classes with other teenagers, and participating in typical adolescent social experiences that he had missed while working on the show for 6 years. The producers and network executives respected Jerry's wishes and agreed to conclude the series with a proper ending rather than simply replacing him with another actor or continuing the show without its central character. This decision was particularly unusual for the time period, when most television shows were viewed as ongoing properties that could continue indefinitely as long as they remained profitable, regardless of whether the original cast members wanted to move on to other projects. The final episode, titled Family Scrapbook, was specifically written as a retrospective look back at the Cleaver family's experiences throughout the series, giving viewers a sense of closure and allowing the characters to have a proper farewell. This thoughtful approach to ending a successful television series was so rare in the early 1960s that it established Leave It to Beaver as a pioneering show that prioritized the well-being of its young performers over purely commercial considerations, creating a template that many future family-oriented programs would follow when dealing with child actors who eventually outgrew their roles. Fact 12. Judy Hensler's puberty problem. Jerry Weil, who played Beaver's often annoying classmate Judy Hensler in 31 episodes of Leave It to Beaver, faced an uncomfortable situation that highlighted the awkward reality of child actors growing up on television during an era when the entertainment industry had very different attitudes about addressing the physical changes that come with adolescence. As Weil began developing physically during her time on the show, the producers found themselves in an increasingly difficult position trying to maintain the illusion that all the child characters were remaining the same age. According to Weil herself, who spoke candidly about the experience decades later in an interview with Remind magazine, the production team initially tried to hide her physical development by having her wear ace bandages under her clothing to flatten and conceal the changes to her body. This makeshift solution was meant to preserve the youthful appearance that the character of Judy Hensler required, since the show needed to maintain the impression that Beaver and his classmates were all still elementary school children. While described feeling particularly uncomfortable during the filming of a baseball scene where her character was supposed to hit a home run and then twirl around in celebration while wearing a full skirt, she was experiencing her menstrual period for the first time during that particular filming day, and the combination of having to perform physical movements while worrying about her appearance and the padding she was wearing created an extremely stressful and embarrassing situation for the young actress. The temporary measures with bandages and careful costume choices eventually became impractical as Weil continued to mature, and the producers ultimately decided that it would be better to write her character out of the show rather than continue trying to disguise her natural physical development. Weil noted that while the male actors on the show were allowed to grow and change naturally as part of their character's development, the expectations for female performers were much more restrictive, requiring them to maintain a specific childlike appearance that became impossible to sustain as they entered their teenage years. Fact 13. The two different houses mystery. The Cleaver family actually lived in two completely different houses during the run of Leave It to Beaver, but the change was so seamlessly handled that most viewers never realized the family had moved from one address to another between the second and third seasons. This behind-the-scenes switch happened because the show's production moved from Republic Studios to Universal Studios, requiring the writers to create a logical explanation for why the exterior shots of the Cleaver home would suddenly look completely different. During the first 2 seasons, the Cleavers lived at 485 Maple Drive in the fictional town of Mayfield, and all the exterior shots were filmed using a house facade that was built on the Republic Studios backlot in what is now CBS Studio Center. When production shifted to Universal Studios starting in Season 3, the show needed a new house facade since they could no longer use the Republic Studios set, so they chose an existing facade that had originally been constructed for the 1955 Humphrey Bogart film, The Desperate Hours. Rather than simply hoping audiences wouldn't notice the dramatic change in the appearance of their home, the show's writers cleverly wrote the move into the storyline by having the Cleaver family relocate to a new address at 211 Pine Street, still within the same fictional town of Mayfield. This explanation allowed them to showcase the completely different house facade at Universal Studios while maintaining the continuity of the characters and their suburban lifestyle. The transition was handled so smoothly that many longtime fans of the show remain unaware that there were ever 2 different Cleaver houses, and most people associate the family exclusively with the Universal Studios house that was used during the final 4 seasons. The Pine Street house became so iconic that it was later used for other television productions and remained a recognizable piece of television history on the Universal Studios backlot for decades after Leave It to Beaver ended its original run. Fact 14. Ward almost wasn't Ward. Hugh Beaumont's casting as Ward Cleaver represented one of the most dramatic career transformations in television history, as the actor had spent most of his film career playing criminals, corrupt officials, and sinister characters in dark crime dramas before becoming America's most trusted and wholesome television father. Throughout the 1940s and early 1950s, Beaumont had established himself as a reliable character actor who specialized in portraying villains and morally questionable figures in film noir movies, making his transition to playing the wise and gentle Ward Cleaver seem almost impossible to audiences who knew his previous work. Before joining Leave It to Beaver, Beaumont appeared in numerous crime films where he typically played roles like crooked cops, scheming businessmen, untrustworthy lawyers, and other characters who operated on the wrong side of the law or lived in the shadowy moral gray areas that defined the film noir genre. His natural acting style and physical appearance made him particularly effective at portraying men who seemed respectable on the surface but harbored dark secrets or criminal intentions beneath their polished exterior. The contrast between Beaumont's previous screen persona and his role as Ward Cleaver was so striking that many viewers who had seen his earlier films found it difficult to accept him as the caring father figure who dispensed gentle wisdom and moral guidance to his 2 sons. His transformation from playing untrustworthy characters to becoming the epitome of paternal reliability and moral authority represented a complete reinvention of his public image and acting career. Beaumont's success in the role of Ward Cleaver was so complete that it essentially erased his previous identity as a villain actor, and most people who knew him from Leave It to Beaver were surprised to learn about his extensive background in crime films. The role became so closely associated with his real personality that many fans assumed he had always been the same kind of wholesome, trustworthy person that Ward Cleaver represented, demonstrating the power of television to completely transform an actor's public image and career trajectory. Fact 15. The military wouldn't risk Beaver. When Jerry Mathers reached military age during the height of the Vietnam War, he demonstrated the same sense of duty and patriotism that his television character might have shown by attempting to enlist in the United States Marine Corps, but military officials reportedly made an unprecedented decision to protect America's most famous child star from the dangers of overseas combat. According to reports, the Marines turned down Mathers' application not because he was unqualified or physically unfit for service, but because they were concerned about the potential public relations disaster that could result if the beloved actor who had played Beaver Cleaver was killed or wounded in action. The military's reasoning was that sending Jerry Mathers to Vietnam would create an unacceptable risk of negative publicity for both the armed forces and the war effort itself, since his death in combat would likely generate widespread media attention and public outcry that could further damage support for the increasingly unpopular conflict. Military officials understood that Mathers represented childhood innocence and American family values to millions of viewers and his death would symbolize the loss of that innocence in a way that could significantly impact public opinion about the war. After being rejected by the Marines, Mathers ultimately enlisted in the California Air National Guard, where he served from 1966 to 1969 as a clerk and typist at the 146th Airlift Wing headquarters. His military service kept him safely within the United States, where he worked as an aide to high-ranking officers and used the typing skills he had learned in high school to handle various administrative duties for the unit. The decision to keep Mathers stateside became even more significant when Buffalo Bills football guard Bob Kalsu was killed in Vietnam combat, reinforcing military concerns about the potential consequences of sending another beloved American icon into the dangerous combat zone. Mathers' case highlighted the unique challenges faced by famous individuals who wanted to serve their country during wartime while dealing with their celebrity status and its potential impact on military operations and public morale.